Hello, you're watching Access. My name's Dave, and I'm joined today by Rob.
Hello.
And I was chosen, I can't think why, a couple of weeks ago to go and play some Evil Within, Rob.
I know why, because you're a big baby when it comes to horror games, Dave.
I think you're probably right, yeah. Not just horror games, Rob, just generally in life. But
that is true.
I went up to Bethesda and I had a couple of hours with the game, and I came up with 5... I mean, there are loads, but these are my 5 main reasons that you'll be terrified by the Evil Within.
Come at me with these reasons, Dave.
So, just to give you a bit of context, it's a third-person survival horror game.
Mm-hmm.
You play the role of Sebastian Castellanos, a detective.
Sounds cool.
He does sound cool. He's quite cool, actually. He's a detective, and he's called to the scene of a mass murder with him and a bunch of his police friends, where he witnesses them mass murdered as well, and then is knocked unconscious by a mysterious villain. And the thing about this villain, which is sort of my first reason that you'll be terrified, is that the horror in the Evil Within is really psychological, and this villain is really psychological.
So it's not all like gore and flailing limbs and...
There's a lot of gore, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of real hands-on gore as well, as you'll see in some of this B-roll. But the sort of crux of the game is really psychological. So this villain is it's almost like he doesn't really exist. It's like he's in your mind. He can sort of teleport around. He just appears at unscripted times in the game.
What if the villain actually turns out to be you?
Well, I mean, it could. Who knows?
I bet that's the twist. I'm going to call it now.
What if it turns out to be actually you, though? Not just you in the character.
You, the player.
What if it's you, the player, in the real world?
Wall.
It breaks the fourth wall. I don't know. But that would be terrifying, and that's one of the reasons I won't be playing The Evil Within, because what if that's true? I'll just die. But the thing about this villain is, like I say, he turns up at sort of unscripted moments throughout the game.
Okay, like Nemesis in Resident Evil 3.
Perhaps I haven't played Resident Evil 3 because I was too terrified. And he has a control over the world. So this is sort of the second reason that you'll be terrified, is that the world is out to get you. Now, in this psychological way, the main villain, I don't know what his name is,
David Jackson.
He can change the world. So, for instance, there was a part I was playing where you've got like a sort of, let's call him a doctor friend. I don't know if he is your friend, but he seemed to be on my side, and we were rescuing a patient, and we were sort of escaping this underground dungeon, and I looked around for 1 minute, and I looked back and he was completely gone. And not only was he completely gone, but the corridor that I was in had completely changed, and suddenly there were doors and they were all locked, and I was forced into this sort of tunnel, and it was just never ending, and you were running down it, and the character himself,
like you're playing a man who's slowly going insane.
Yeah, exactly that. He doesn't know what's going on. It's that whole thing of, you don't know what's happening, and the main character doesn't know what's happening, and you're learning together.
Maybe that's why it's called The Evil Within, Dave.
Well,
because it's all in your mind.
I don't know, Rob. I wouldn't like to say. But that was terrifying. More than just like that, how this villain can change the world and make it really, really sort of scary and unpredictable. There's loads of traps everywhere, which make you just sneak around. There's like trip wires, explosives and stuff, things that will make sounds to attract the enemies. So a big part of, as you might expect, this game is sneaking. You're sneaking because you don't know what's around the corner, traps around the corner, but you're sneaking also to avoid the enemies.
I see.
You do have weapons, but the ammunition is scarce, really, really scarce. You've got a few last-ditch weapons as well, which you can craft ammunition for. It's like a crossbow with different kinds of ammo. But ammo is so scarce that you want to really avoid as much as possible. And more than that, some of the enemies just can't be killed, which is always fun.
I see.
It's so much worse when you can't, you're just completely defenseless. Even with guns, you just can't attack these enemies. So a large part of the game is just
running away.
Running, and more than just running away, hiding. So you can hide under beds, you can hide in
it sounds a bit like Outlast.
Closets. Yeah, think Outlast. And it's a third person game, but when you do that, it goes into that horrible first person view where you're just trying to peek through tiny little gaps in the closet and under beds and stuff. Speaking of running away, they've put in a really lovely stamina mechanic
Oh, that sounds good. So you can't sprint for too long then, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, you really get punished for sprinting too long. It's not just like you can sprint for a bit and then you slow down, and you can't sprint for a bit. What's the bar? He literally stops.
Does he bend over and vomit on the floor with exertion?
He bends over, panting. I mean, and I was getting chased by this horrible sort of spidery woman down a corridor, and I just thought, just run. Put the, held the button down. I think I was running for about 3 seconds, and he was bent double. And I could just see us just creeping up behind me. Nothing I could do about it.
You'd think there'd be like an adrenaline bar as well. Like if there was a spider woman chasing me, I would sprint forever, Dave.
You would, but
I would just sprint forever.
I totally agree. But it turns out, I think, it's just based in some fact. You can't sprint forever, Rob. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen you sprint anywhere.
It sounds a lot like Resident Evil 4. Not in that it has stamina, but in that you have to constantly manage your movement. Because in Resi 4, you couldn't move and shoot at the same time. So you had to constantly be aware of where you were moving to, what enemies were around that area. And if you did shoot something, you had to make it count because... ammo.
It's funny you should say
scarce.
that, because a lot of that rings true. I mean, definitely the accuracy, the ammo being scarce, the sort of stamina and the moving and firing mechanic, because this game is made by Shinji Mikami.
I see. Okay.
Who is responsible for the Resi series.
There you go. He's
amongst other things
the daddy of video game horror.
Yeah, he really, really is. I mean, arguably one of the first successful games on PlayStation, let alone survival horror games. I think, coined the term even, survival horror. But this game, very, very Resi. The whole over the shoulder, the whole look and feel of everything. A lot of this sort of the movement of the enemies and the characters and stuff. More than that, one of the levels is set in a big giant mansion that you come into from outside.
I see.
You go through
very Resi.
Go through the front doors. You can go left or right or up this big sweeping staircase. And the character even says, now I don't know because I haven't, I just played the specific portion of the game, but the character even says how he doesn't think he's been there before, but this mansion's very familiar. And I like to think that that's just a lovely nod to the Resi series. So I think...
That does sound like a lovely nod. You've maybe more excited than scared, Dave, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you're one of those weird people perhaps who enjoys horror games and, would look forward to playing one, whereas I can think of nothing worse. But I think that there's going to be a lot of nods to Resi in the game, and like the sort of glory days of Resi, everything that made Resi really, really good seemed to just be in The Evil Within in sort of like spades, loads and loads of it.
That's good.
I also just want to quickly have a little nod to all the puzzles in the game as well, which are also there's loads and loads of puzzles. They're all kind of horrible as well, and it reinforces that sort of psychological element. So for instance, I was in a locked room with a dead body, and I could see on the wall there was like an X-ray chart of this dead body, and you could see there was a key in a particular part of him, and you had to cut him open and get the key.
That sounds nice.
Which was nice. And there's other puzzles. There's a door. There's a series of locks on a door that are activated by correctly probing a specific part of a brain. It's like think of a head that's been sort of kept alive on a desk, and you have to put electrodes into it to make it feel emotions to open doors. It's just horrible.
Doesn't sound too bad, Dave.
It's just horrible.
It doesn't sound that bad.
You have to literally, with my hands, I was probing someone's brain. It was awful.
Literally with your hands, or
well,
literally?
I mean, through the controller. But I'm terrified for The Evil Within.
Good.
You're excited.
It's done its job then.
But if
it?
anyone sees our Let's Plays of Outlast, they'll understand that you're a complete madman.
Yeah.
And the thought of horrible things gets you quite excited.
The thought of prodding someone's brain, gets me really very excited.
Yeah. So if you'd like to see any of that, do check the channel. Be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with everything on PlayStation, and try not to have nightmares about The Evil Within.